Neil, with Rick Santorum facing a possible triple loss in tomorrow's Republican primaries, everyone's asking, will he finally call it quits? Doesn't seem likely, does it?
You know, it doesn't. He's in for the long haul, he's saying. He's even been saying that, he said on some of the talk shows yesterday that he would stay until Mitt Romney got to the necessary level of delegates, 1,144. And you look at the map and the calendar and the math, and there's no way that could happen until June. On the other hand, I think it's really unlikely, actually, that Rick Santorum sticks it out that long. Right now, if he loses in Wisconsin tomorrow night, and if he then has to wait for 3 weeks campaigning hard in his own home state of Pennsylvania and comes out of there either a loser in the popular vote or in the delegate count out of Pennsylvania, it's really hard to see how he manages to stick around and to stay relevant.
And yet he still seems to be insisting he'll do so. As you mentioned, he made the rounds of the talk shows over the weekend. Let's hear from one, what he had to say.
If Governor Romney gets that required number, then we without a doubt, if he's at that number, we'll step aside. But right now, he's not there. He's not even close to it.
Not even close to it, he says. And yet, people are calling from him within the party more and more. Even Tea Party activists who once said they could never support Romney are now saying, look, we got to wrap this thing up. We've got to move on to the big fish we got to fry, and that's President Obama.
That's what we're going to see, I think, in Wisconsin. Will be interesting test. Some of our people that were out there over the weekend interviewing people at events, there seems to be a growing sentiment among just normal voters, even if they're not hugely inclined towards Romney, to go his direction anyway, just because there's a desire within the party to move on. And if we see that Santorum ends up losing among a lot of the people that he might have won among that constituent of rural voters, evangelicals, et cetera, a month ago, then I think that'll be a pretty clear sign that various parts of the country and within various factions of the party are really ready to close this thing.
And Neil, one important voting group that has sort of left Rick Santorum, or maybe had never been there for him in the first place, is obviously women. Very interesting strategy he and his campaign have been employing of late, bringing his wife out more and more on the campaign trail. What do you make of that, and has it been helping him with the numbers?
It's hard to say that it has been, but it's been a very big technique that we've seen. Wives have been very important in this campaign. They always are, but, Callista Gingrich has been constantly at Newt Gingrich's side. Ann Romney is going to be a very big asset of his, in all likelihood, going into the general election, assuming he gets the nomination. And he's been talking about, using her overtly as sort of his ambassador to the female vote, which I think is a little bit dubious to sort of use your wife as your interpreter, so to speak, with women. But, Santorum's also been doing it as well. I don't think Karen Santorum has nearly the sort of ingrained political skills that Ann Romney does. I think Ann Romney is a little bit in her own class.
Yeah, still interesting he's brought her out. She's been speaking about healthcare and national security issues, among other things, such as what her husband likes to eat and do and how he knows the price of milk at home. That's Karen Santorum. Let's go back for just a minute, Neil, to Mitt Romney. He is certainly acting at this point like he has this all sewed up, like he's pretty much ignoring the other three candidates left in the race and really targeting Obama. Is this smart on his part?
I don't think there's really a downside to it necessarily. And, this Tuesday is going to be an interesting punctuation moment because he's going to win with all certainty in Washington here, 19 delegates. He's going to probably win very big in Maryland. If he wins in Wisconsin, too, this is going to be kind of all sights on the general election. And he's really needing to start to move some of the numbers and figure out what his exact message is going to be against Obama. And we saw in a stump speech, basically a remade stump speech on Friday, what that attack line is going to look like. And they just want to move on to that because as some of these polls have showed, he's got some difficulties out there, particularly among the female vote. A huge gap at the moment between him and Obama on that front.
Neil, very quickly, for people who don't follow politics, the ins and outs daily like you do, just explain to them why a Rick Santorum stays in the race at this point when the math and the odds, just to borrow the Hunger Game phrase, are not in his favor.
It's a little hard to figure in some ways. On the one hand, he could just be there in case there's some sort of unforeseen stumble and, Romney were to suddenly be discredited. It's very hard to see how that would happen. And there he is waiting in the wings. Otherwise, in some ways, like today, they came out with a very harsh ad comparing Romney to Obama and basically saying that they're the same person. And this is the kind of thing that would make it extremely difficult for Romney to reach out to him, not necessarily as a vice presidential pick, but to be part of his cabinet or whatever. So it's hard to understand. I mean, you could say he's looking towards 2016, wanting to, vet his message in more states going down the road, but he also, I think, runs the risks of doing some damage to himself within the Republican Party.
Interesting on your part analysis. Now, one other person getting back in the race, Sarah Palin, and by the race, I actually mean a big race. That is the morning show race. She's going to be hosting the Today Show tomorrow, going up against Katie Couric over at GMA, who is filling in for Robin Roberts while she's on vacation. What do you make of this move by the Today Show?
Well, I mean, it's perfect going kind of head-to-head, mano-a-mano against Katie Couric, who, of course, was her big nemesis in 2008 and didn't do her much good in the early going when she was being introduced to the country. And the thing about Sarah Palin is, when she looks at her own numbers, even at her own Google search numbers and realizes, wow, I'm falling out of the conversation. I live in Alaska. I need to kind of do something to reinsert myself. She does something. And we saw it over the last year when it came to her flirting with the campaign. And in the end, of course, she decided not to run. Now she has 4 years to figure out, well, what am I going to do? And so this is a classic Sarah Palin move, it seems to me, to jump back into the spotlight. And maybe we're going to be seeing more of that.